The life and career of Quincy Promes is one of the craziest stories in professional sports, let alone professional football. It's a story about how a young boy from the rough streets of Amsterdam became a millionaire through his talents on the pitch, only to develop into a man who threw away blessings that most people could only dream of for the purposes of secretly portraying himself as a drug kingpin. And the craziest part of the story of Quincy Promes isn't even the sheer disregard for his career as a footballer, but through his dream to try to portray himself as sort of like a Dutch Scarface, he almost got away with being charged and convicted of acts of violence and drug trafficking, if it wasn't for a few mistakes. Promes was born in Amsterdam in 1992 and quickly fell in love with football at a young age. Ultimately, this resulted in him getting an opportunity that most Dutch boys could only dream of, getting into the youth academy system at Ajax. But at the age of 16, he was kicked out of Ajax's youth academy system due to behavioral issues both on and off the pitch. Following being released by Ajax, he bounced around through a couple different youth academy systems, but joined Twente in 2009 where he started his professional career. In the summer of 2012, he went on loan to Go Ahead Eagles, who were in the second highest division of Dutch football. Notably, his manager was Erik ten Hag, who was starting out his young managerial career at this time, and the club would eventually earn promotion, returning to the Eredivisie for the first time in 18 years. When he returned to Twente in the 2013-2014 season, he quickly impressed and started to get a lot of traction from some big European clubs. Ultimately, this resulted in him getting a big money move to Spartak Moscow in August of 2014 for a reported fee of 15 million euros. Now, this is the team that Quincy Promes is often very much associated because he was there for 4 years after he left Twente. And while the Russian Premier League is kind of a niche league and there's not many superstars, Quincy Promes is easily one of the biggest superstars they had. In the 2016-2017 season, he helped Spartak Moscow win the Russian Premier League and ultimately was named player of the season that year. The following season, in 17-18, he was the top scorer of the Russian Premier League with 15 goals as well. And his performances in Russia was a big contributing factor to him earning a big money move to La Liga side Sevilla in 2018 for a reported 20 million euro transfer fee. However, this was a low light of his career as he only scored 3 goals through that entire season and ultimately decided to part ways after only 1 year. But him parting ways with Sevilla resulted in him getting a transfer fee of 15.7 million euros back to his boyhood club of Ajax. And he was extremely successful with the Dutch Giants on the pitch, but ultimately it would be his behavioral issues that he had as a young boy that would flare up as an adult again and get him into a lot of hot water in the Netherlands. But his first season with Ajax was so good. He scored 16 goals and 5 assists through 28 games. However, in December of 2020, Promes was detained as a suspect in a stabbing incident that involved his own cousin in July of the same year. While an investigation continued, he denied any involvement in the stabbing incident. And while he was performing on the pitch, it ultimately would be the behavioral issues that he also had as a child, which led his boyhood club of Ajax to part ways with him in February of 2021, as it was reported he would be returning to his previous club of Spartak Moscow for a reported 8.5 million euro transfer fee. And just 8 months after he returned to the Russian Premier League, he was prosecuted in the Netherlands for the stabbing incident with his cousin. In March of 2022, it was reported that Promes would be facing attempted murder charges for the incident, and a trial date was scheduled for March of 2023. However, Promes decided to remain in Russia during his trial as there was no extradition treaty between Russia and the Netherlands. A small win for him, though. His attempted murder charges were downgraded to aggravated assault charges, and he was convicted and found guilty of aggravated assault and sentenced to 18 months imprisonment in the Netherlands. However, given that there was no extradition treaty between the Netherlands and Russia at that time, he was not going to return for his prison sentence, and his lawyer said he was going to appeal his prison sentence. But the aggravated assault charges and 18 months imprisonment are only scraping the bottom of the barrel when it comes to Quincy Promes. As on May 30th, 2023, Dutch prosecutors announced that he would be charged with drug trafficking after allegedly attempting to import over 1.3 metric tons of cocaine through the Antwerp port back in January 2020. On February 14th, 2024, Promes was sentenced to 6 years in prison after being found guilty of drug trafficking. Again, his lawyers announced their intention to appeal the verdict. He was placed on the international wanted list. However, given that there was again no extradition treaty between the Netherlands and Russia, the priority of him getting extradited was extremely low. However, just 15 days after he was found guilty of drug trafficking in the Netherlands, he was arrested at an airport in Dubai. Promes was returning to Russia from a mid-season camp that Spartak Moscow had held in the United Arab Emirates. However, he was arrested on suspicion of leaving the scene of a traffic accident. But what makes this so interesting is we need to back up on the dates a little bit to really get the full scope of this. On the 14th of February 2024, Promes is found guilty of drug trafficking and sentenced to 6 years in prison. 15 days later, on the 29th of February, he is detained at a Dubai airport on suspicion of leaving the scene of a traffic accident. While he was released from custody the following day, he had to remain in the country until the court date for his minor charge, which was scheduled for the 12th of March 2024. When he appears for his court date on the 12th of March 2024, it is revealed that Dutch prosecutors have formally requested his extradition to the Netherlands. And due to this request, Promes had to remain in the UAE and could not return to Russia. Ultimately, on the 1st of July 2024, Spartak Moscow announced that Promes' contract with the club had expired and they would not be renewing him due to his legal circumstances and that he could not leave the UAE. And it's important to note that there have been extradition issues between Dutch nationals who go and hide out in the United Arab Emirates, specifically Dubai, in the past. But ultimately, it's kind of known that this is a loose extradition policy, and it often can take quite some time for a lot of Dutch nationals to be extradited from the UAE back to the Netherlands. And in September of 2024, it was announced that Quincy Promes would be joining UAE First Division League club Dubai United. And he played there for a full season, and I think he had some reasonable success. However, obviously, this was not the same level of football that he had been playing previously in Europe, and there was a lot going on with his pending extradition. And on the 20th of June 2025, Promes was extradited to the Netherlands. A Dutch court has ruled he must remain in prison while appealing his convictions. Now, it's important to note that Quincy Promes is currently appealing both of the charges on drug trafficking as well as the aggravated assault. However, if he loses the appeal on both of them, he will have to remain in Dutch prison for 7.5 years, the 6 years that he was sentenced for the drug trafficking and the 18 months or year and a half that he was sentenced for aggravated assault. But a big reason I find this entire story so interesting is that had he not been arrested in the United Arab Emirates and not acted like an idiot and fled the scene of an accident in Dubai, he probably would have gotten away with all of this. He wouldn't have been arrested in Dubai. He probably would have gotten on a flight, gone back to Russia, and he would still probably be playing football in Russia as we're currently talking about him. But he just got too big for his britches, and I think he must have thought he could get away with everything and anything. And ultimately, I think the extradition relationship between the Netherlands and the UAE has just gotten better over the past couple of years, and that resulted in him being extradited in June of 2025. But let me know what you guys think of this entire situation down below in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, click that notification bell, and hype up the video as well. Thank you all, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.